The story starts inside a big airplane. Passengers are walking down the aisle looking for their seats, and some people talking quietly. An elderly African man is sitting by the window. He is wearing a clean, simple suit and glasses. He holds a book in his hands and reads calmly. He looks kind and peaceful, not knowing what is about to happen. A white man walks down the aisle pulling his suitcase. He looks annoyed. When he reaches the seat next to the elderly man, he stops and checks his ticket. He frowns and says, "Really? I have to sit here?" He speaks just loud enough for the elderly man to hear. The elderly man looks up, smiles politely, and moves slightly to make room. The white man sits down without saying thank you. He drops his bag loudly and sighs like he is very unhappy. As the plane gets ready for takeoff, the white man starts fidgeting in his seat. He leans away from the elderly man and crosses his arms. He mutters under his breath, "This is why I hate flying." You never know who you'll sit next to. The elderly man stays quiet. He keeps reading his book, acting like he didn't hear anything. His calmness makes the white man even more upset. Other passengers notice what's happening, but no one says anything. The air feels tense as the plane begins to move. This is how their journey begins. But the white man has no idea that the elderly man he is treating badly will soon save the life of someone very important to him. As the flight continues, the white man becomes more restless. He keeps glancing at the elderly African man with a look of disgust. Finally, he speaks up loudly, "Why do I have to sit next to someone like you?" His tone is sharp, and a few passengers nearby turn their heads to look. The elderly man stays calm. He looks at the white man and gives a polite smile but doesn't say anything. This only makes the white man angrier. He calls for a flight attendant and says, "I need to change my seat. I can't sit here." The flight attendant checks the seating chart and apologizes. "I'm sorry, sir. The flight is full. There are no other seats available." The white man huffs and rolls his eyes. "Of course," he mutters. He leans back in his seat, but he doesn't stop. He starts complaining loudly, saying things like, "I paid good money for this flight, and now I have to deal with this." The elderly man stays quiet the whole time, keeping his eyes on his book. He doesn't react to the rude comments. His calmness seems to irritate the white man even more. At one point, the white man shifts in his seat dramatically, bumping into the elderly man on purpose. "Watch it," he says angrily, even though it was clearly his fault. The other passengers notice the tension, but no one speaks up. Some look uncomfortable, while others whisper quietly to each other. A few flight attendants glance over but seem unsure of how to handle the situation. The elderly man continues to sit quietly, his face calm and focused. But the white man's behavior shows no signs of stopping. He seems determined to make the man next to him feel small. Little does he know, the very person he is humiliating is about to become the most important person on the flight. The flight goes on, but the white man doesn't stop his rude behavior. He keeps making loud comments, hoping to get attention. "Why do they even let people like him on planes?" he mutters, shaking his head. Some passengers glance over, but most stay quiet, unsure of what to do. The elderly African man still doesn't react. He keeps reading his book and staying calm. His silence makes the white man even angrier. "You think you're too good to talk to me?" the man snaps, leaning closer. The flight attendants notice the commotion and step in. One of them approaches and speaks politely. "Sir, please lower your voice and respect your neighbor. We want everyone to have a comfortable flight." The white man waves her off rudely. "I'm not doing anything wrong. I just don't want to sit next to him," he says loudly, pointing at the elderly man. The flight attendant looks uncomfortable but reminds him to behave. Passengers around them start whispering. A few people shake their heads in disapproval, but no one speaks up. The elderly man remains calm, flipping the page of his book as if nothing is happening. The white man becomes more frustrated. He shifts in his seat, bumping into the elderly man on purpose again. "Oops, my bad," he says sarcastically, smirking. The tension in the cabin grows. People are clearly aware of what's happening, but the silence feels heavy. Some passengers look annoyed, while others avoid eye contact, pretending not to notice. The white man thinks he's winning, but what happens next will change everything. Suddenly, a loud cry breaks the tension in the cabin. A woman's panicked voice echoes through the plane. "Help! Someone! Please help my son!" she screams. The sound comes from a few rows ahead. Passengers turn their heads, and the mood shifts from awkward tension to fear and concern. The woman is leaning over a young boy who is slumped in his seat. His face is pale and his eyes are closed. He isn't moving. "He's not breathing," the mother cries, her voice trembling. She shakes him gently, but there is no response. The flight attendants rush to her side, their faces filled with worry. One of them grabs the intercom and announces, "We have a medical emergency. Is there a doctor or medical professional on board?" The white man freezes in his seat. His face turns pale and his hands start to shake. "That's my son," he shouts, his voice filled with panic. He unbuckles his seatbelt and tries to rush forward, but a flight attendant stops him. "Sir, please stay calm and give us space to help," she says firmly. The cabin is now filled with murmurs and gasps. Passengers watch anxiously, some craning their necks to see what's happening. The boy's mother looks around desperately, tears streaming down her face. "Please, someone help him." In the midst of the chaos, the elderly African man calmly closes his book and stands up. He raises his hand and says in a steady voice, "I'm a doctor. Let me help." The passengers fall silent, their eyes fixed on the elderly man. Even the flight attendants seem momentarily stunned. The white man stares at him in disbelief, his mouth opening and closing like he can't find the words. Without waiting for anyone's approval, the elderly man walks down the aisle toward the boy. The tension in the cabin shifts once again, this time to hope. Everyone watches as the man kneels beside the child, his calm presence bringing a sense of relief to the chaotic scene. The elderly African man kneels beside the boy, his hands steady and confident. He quickly checks the boy's pulse and opens his eyes, examining them carefully. The passengers watch in silence, some holding their breath. The white man, still standing, stares at him in shock, his eyes wide. "Please, help him," the mother pleads, her voice full of fear. The elderly man looks up at her and nods calmly. "Don't worry," he says softly. "I am a doctor. I will take care of him." The white man's expression changes. His face shows confusion and disbelief. He opens his mouth to speak, but no words come out. He looks around at the other passengers, who are all staring at the elderly man with a mix of awe and respect. The elderly man gently tilts the boy's head back, checking his airway, then begins chest compressions. His movements are quick and efficient, showing he knows exactly what he's doing. The cabin is completely still, except for the soft sound of the man's actions. After a few moments, the boy's chest rises and falls again. His eyes flutter open, and he takes a deep breath. The passengers let out a collective sigh of relief. The mother gasps and grabs her son's hand, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. The white man stands frozen, his mouth slightly open, still trying to understand what is happening. He looks at the elderly man, his face slowly turning red with embarrassment. He had been so rude to this man just moments before, and now this same man had saved his son's life. The elderly man stands up, brushing his hands off. He will be okay now, he says quietly. He just needs rest. He looks at the mother, who is still in shock but now full of gratitude. The white man finally speaks, his voice faltering. Thank you. I don't know what to say. His words are shaky, and he looks ashamed. The elderly man just nods politely and steps back. He doesn't need recognition. He only wanted to help. The elderly man steps back, allowing the flight attendants to take over. The mother holds her son tightly, still crying, but this time with tears of relief. The boy is breathing normally now, and his color is returning to his face. The passengers in the cabin begin to relax, and some even clap softly. The white man, still standing in shock, looks at the elderly man with guilt written all over his face. He opens his mouth, but no words come out. He realizes that the man he had been rude to, the man he had humiliated, was the one who had saved his son's life. The flight attendants thank the elderly man, praising him for his quick thinking. One of them smiles and says, "We're so lucky you were here. Thank you so much, sir." The elderly man simply nods, his face calm as ever. He says, "It was my duty." The white man, now clearly embarrassed, steps closer to the elderly man. His hands shake slightly as he stammers, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know who you were. I was wrong." The elderly man looks at him for a moment, then speaks quietly, "It's all right. What matters now is that your son is safe." His voice is kind but firm, as if to say that the past can't be changed, but the present is what counts. The white man lowers his head, ashamed. He had judged the elderly man because of his race, assuming he was not important. But now, standing in front of him, he sees the man's true worth. His face turns red with embarrassment, and he silently promises to never act that way again. The elderly man doesn't wait for more apologies. He simply walks back to his seat and sits down, picking up his book again. He doesn't need to hear any more. He has already done what he came to do. The rest of the passengers remain silent, reflecting on what just happened. Some look at the white man, but no one says anything. The atmosphere in the cabin has completely changed. The tension has shifted from anger and discomfort to respect and understanding. As the plane continues its flight, the atmosphere has completely changed. The white man now sits quietly in his seat, his eyes often glancing over at the elderly man who is calmly reading his book. The guilt still weighs on him, but he knows he can't undo the past. However, he has learned something important. The elderly man's calm and kind behavior has left a deep impression on him. He realizes how wrong he was to judge someone based on their appearance and age. Slowly, he stands up and walks over to the elderly man's seat. The passengers watch, curious about what will happen next. "Excuse me," the white man says, his voice much softer now. The elderly man looks up from his book, his face neutral but polite. I just wanted to say thank you again," the white man continues. "And I'm really sorry for how I acted earlier. I was rude, and I didn't understand who you were. I've learned my lesson. Thank you for saving my son's life." The elderly man smiles gently, nodding. "It was nothing," he replies, his voice calm and kind. "You don't need to apologize. What matters is that your son is well." The white man feels a weight lift from his shoulders, knowing that the elderly man has forgiven him without hesitation. He returns to his seat, his heart feeling lighter. From that moment on, he starts to think about how he treats others. He knows it's not enough to just apologize once. It's about changing how he sees people, no matter their background. As the flight nears its destination, the passengers talk quietly among themselves, some sharing smiles, others still reflecting on the unexpected turn of events. The elderly man, who had been so calm and composed, looks out the window, his face serene. He knows that in his own small way, he has made a difference today. The flight lands and the passengers begin to disembark. The white man looks at the elderly man one last time before getting off the plane. "Goodbye, and thank you again," he says, his voice sincere. The elderly man simply nods, offering him a warm smile. As they part ways, both men understand that the world is a little different now because of one moment of kindness and one lesson learned the hard way. As the elderly man walks off the plane, he feels no need for praise or attention. His actions have already spoken for themselves. The lesson from this experience is clear. Kindness, patience, and humility are powerful. In a world where people often judge each other based on appearance or race, it's important to remember that every person has value, and everyone deserves respect. The white man, on the other hand, has learned a hard lesson. His behavior was driven by his own prejudices and assumptions, but through the elderly man's calm and heroic actions, he was shown how wrong he had been. It wasn't enough to simply apologize. The true change would come in how he treated others in the future. He now understands that respect and kindness aren't earned based on someone's position or appearance. They are a basic human right. The moral of this story is simple but important. Never judge others based on their looks or background. Every person has something valuable to offer, and you never know when someone you least expect will have the power to change your life. A single moment of kindness can create a ripple effect, reminding us all that compassion and understanding can make the world a better place. As the passengers leave the plane, they carry this lesson with them. And although the story ends here, the impact of what happened will stay with them for a long time. The elderly man unknowingly made a difference, teaching everyone on that flight that true greatness comes from within, not from outward appearances. We hope you enjoyed and learned a lot from this story. For more related content, please subscribe our channel and don't forget to like, share, and comment. Thanks for watching.